Welcome everyone to this roundtable on India-Taiwan issues with a focus on investment opportunities for Taiwanese firms in India. Taiwan and India have a lot in common. Both are vibrant democracies with a booming technology sector and possess high-quality human capital. There are also commercial synergies to explore here as Taiwan seeks to diversify its investment destinations while India seeks to shore up the hardware focus on its technology sector through the Make in India scheme. Yet, it does appear that more could be done to augment this commercial relationship. This roundtable will essentially seek to explore different avenues as to how this can be achieved. Joining us today is a lineup of speakers who will provide their different perspectives to this commercial relationship. First, we have Mr. B.B. Naidu. Mr. B.B. Naidu is the chairman of the Karnataka Digital Economy Mission and brings 30 years of experience as an entrepreneur, mentor, and Indian IT growth facilitator. He had played a very critical role for the growth of the IT industry of India in his capacity as the director of the Software Technology Parks of India. He has also founded and helmed many organizations such as Invest Karnataka, Karnataka Knowledge Commission, and other organizations. It is a pleasure to have you here with us, sir. Up next, we have Mr. Anku Jain, who is heading MediaTek's pan-India operations. With a turnover of nearly 8 billion US dollars, MediaTek is a leading Taiwan-based global fabless semiconductor company that powers nearly 2 billion devices a year. Anku's expertise includes business leadership and working with cross-cultural teams across India, China, and Taiwan in the areas of embedded software, semiconductor, telecom, and mobile phone design. Anku himself holds a number of patents also in the field of mobile telephony as well. Then moving on to Dr. Sana Hashmi from the Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation. Dr. Hashmi is a visiting fellow at Taiwan-Asia Exchange Foundation since March 2021. Her primary areas of research focus on Taiwan foreign relations, China's foreign policy, Taiwan's new Southbound Policy, Taiwan-India relations, as well as the Indo-Pacific region. She was also a former consultant to India's Ministry of External Affairs. And in 2017, the UK government named Dr. Hashmi as a next generation scholar on security and foreign policy issues. Last, but certainly not the least, we're very happy to have with us Mr. Stanley Huang from III, which is the Institute for Information and Industry in Taiwan, where he currently serves as Deputy Director General of the International Division. He is responsible for coordinating collaboration activities between III and its global partners. Mr. Wang's team has also worked extensively with Taiwanese industry partners to help promote their solutions internationally. And Mr. Wang also serves as an executive secretary for the Taiwan-India Industrial Collaboration Working Group established by the IDB. Earlier, Mr. Wang also served as the policy coordinator of the Science and Technology Advisory Group, which was an advisory group to the Executive Yuan, that is the cabinet in Taiwan. Now, a couple of housekeeping notes. We have a Q&A box here, and for the audience members watching us live, request you to please put your questions into the Q&A box. I'll be raising them towards the end of the webinar. And please feel free to also leave your questions onto the live YouTube feed as well. Now, I would request each of the speakers to make brief opening remarks of 5 minutes duration each. I'll start with Mr. B.B. Naidu. Sir, could I just ask you to briefly discuss what you make of the landscape when it comes to investment opportunities for Taiwanese companies in India? Essentially, the question is, what are some advantages which are unique to India, which some investors in Taiwan could be looking at?
Thank you. Thank you. But when you look at this, it's a very interesting topic, India-Taiwan trade relationship. I've been associated in trying to promote this relationship for the last 15 to 20 years. And many times I did visit Taiwan and requesting the Taiwanese company to look at India and set up the operations here. I must tell you, in spite of so much of effort that India has put in, things did not move as we anticipated. Now this is the time. Taiwanese needs to come look at India. I know Taiwanese has a great policy of Southbound program, and the Southbound program, India is one of the jewels. They are looking at India, but still they need to put their foot forward. 2-3 things that are happening. Number one, if you look at the trade deficit, it is more than $2.41 billion. Our import is 4.3 billion and our export is 1.62 billion. But if India and Taiwan can come together, India could become a potentially their second hub to for doing the manufacturing, and together we can reach the global markets. The second thing what is also happening is, all the bilateral trade issues that have been there probably 10, 15 years back, all those things have been sorted out. Right now, we have a pretty good bilateral relationship between, including the double taxation avoidance agreement, etc., etc. Now, what is happening in India? India, all of you know that the current electronics market is around $120 billion, and it is likely to go to 300 billion plus by 2026. And our manufacturing is minuscule in that. Our local manufacturing as low as probably around 50 to 60 billion dollars. So there are a lot more the India can do that for the domestic market. This is where the India also needs the help and support of the Taiwan. This is the right time. The reason why I'm telling that this is the right time is, if you look at probably all of you must be reading in the paper, there are a lot of things that are happening in terms of the policy. There are three things that have happened in the policy. Number one, the Taiwan, we know that MediaTek came many years back, and a lot of design companies also looked at India and used their design services of India. And right now, to strengthen further, we came out with this a DLI scheme from the government of India, design linked incentive scheme. And this is one incentive scheme that both the Taiwanese companies and Indian companies can take the advantage of the design skills that are available. The second one, we all know that last few years, Samsung set up a large manufacturing facility in India, which is second largest manufacturing facility. And that is extremely, extremely doing well in terms of their productivity, right? Now, that coupled with the PLI scheme, production linked incentive scheme, it is at another. And we have been noticing that last few years, when the Samsung came here, there some of the OEMs from the Taiwan also started coming to India. The OEMs could be like, microphone chip companies and the camera chip companies, etc., etc. That means these phones do need a huge supply chain. Now, this is the time for the companies from Taiwan to look at the supply chain that is needed for the manufacturing of the mobile phones and etc. The third is the large ticket item, which is the semicon policy. There are three policies under the semicon. As you all know, that semiconductor and display manufacturing, semiconductor grade fab, etc., etc. So these policies, almost more than 50% of the project cost is supported by the government of India, both for the semicon fab manufacturing as well as the semicon display manufacturing. And then you also have an ATMP policy, that is a subsystems a policy where you can get around 30% of the capital subsidy. So what it means is, the policy level, everything, whatever the government can do, it has done. You have a domestic market which is growing. Nobody can afford to ignore that. And this is the time that, the companies from Taiwan should come and take advantage of both the policy as well as the market in India, so that they can globally become successful. And India could be, can become the best partner for them for their global success. For geopolitical reasons, they also need a partner like India, and India has the local market to make them viable to set up their operations, coupled with our own policies, can really bring in a lot more opportunity for them to succeed here. So, in short, this is the time that India and Taiwan can come together and take advantage, both in terms of the design through the DLI scheme, and the manufacturing through the PLI scheme, and on the high-tech manufacturing, the fab and other things. And also fab comes with a lot of supply chain, including the fab equipment manufacturing. It's a huge. Taiwan is one of the largest fab equipment manufacturer in the world. And they could get a potential, a potential opportunity from India. So, together, I think we are in a pretty good, huge opportunity. both countries needs to look at, and the companies should cooperate with each other for the mutual benefit.
Thank you, sir, for those opening remarks. You made a point about Taiwanese companies being interested in investing in India. I think that's a great segue to go to Mr. Anku Jain of MediaTek. Anku, my question to you for the opening remarks is, I guess the question is, what has been the secret sauce of MediaTek doing well in the Indian market? And what are the lessons which other Taiwanese companies can possibly take from MediaTek?
Yeah, so as Mr. Naidu said, MediaTek is one of the early companies who came in India, and we actually opened our office in 2004, way back in 2004. Much before we had such discussions between for Taiwan investments in India, and we have been actually growing very steadily since then. And I think that's one of the secrets that we could realize early on was the talent pool available in India. Taiwan is a small country, and the number of talent pool available there is much smaller than what we have in India. So that is one reason that MediaTek chose to set up 3 R&D centers in India. We have that in Bangalore, Noida, and Mumbai, and definitely that was one big reason for us to come here. And secondly was definitely India gives a market access to over 1.3 billion people. So that is definitely a very big reason for Taiwanese companies to look for setting up investments in India. And India has a stable industrial and political environment, availability of skilled workforce, and also a shared cultural relationship. So I think that has built up over the past few years. So definitely we have come a long way, and this is maybe a right time to do more and more. I think as Mr. Naidu said, it's just a kind of inflection point where much more Taiwanese investments can happen in India. And I think we have seen that already over 116 Taiwanese companies have set up businesses here. So actually we have really come a long way, and involving over about $1 billion already in different fields like information and communication technology, like in MediaTek, and also things like medical devices, automobile components, steel, electronics, engineering, and financial services. So there are many different verticals in which Taiwan has invested. Taiwanese companies have invested in India, and again, as was discussed earlier, the Indian government recent schemes for display fabs and semiconductor fabs is really kind of again an inflection point, where Taiwanese companies can really look forward to carry on this relationship to a next level. And we have already seen that companies like TSMC and UMC have shown interest in that aspect, setting up a fab in India. Let's see how that goes. The discussions are ongoing. Although the Indian side has proposed several sites for this hub, going through, but there's no conclusion yet. So that is something which is we are looking forward to, and see how how soon that happens. But I think this is really a great opportunity, and for Taiwanese companies to come to India. Again, from manufacturing point of view, this is the time when Indian government really looks at setting up not only fab but also the electronic manufacturing ecosystem to be built in India. So that we are foreseeing about $300 billion worth of business by 2026. So that really shows the kind of potential which the Indian investments can have return on investment for the Taiwanese companies. So that's where we are right now, and I think MediaTek, for your original question, what is the secret sauce for us? I think we have been present here for such a long time. We understand how do we co-work with our Taiwanese colleagues. So that's really a very important secret sauce. How do the two cultures work together to make efficient and productive output of whatever we are working on. I think that has taken time. So we have actually grown from a few tens of people. I think we have 30 people when we started, and now we are almost 1,000 people in India, and it's all research and development here. So I think that duration that we have spent here has taught us to do business in a very efficient manner along with our Taiwanese colleagues. I think that is something which the new investment which come in, they will need to kind of see and look at some case studies like MediaTek or maybe some other companies. What are the good practices which they followed, which can make them successful? So I think that's what I would like to talk about, for that question. But definitely we have a long way to go. And I totally agree with Mr. Naidu. I think Mr. Naidu that is inflection point, but more can be done. In areas like free trade agreement and And I think that's something we can maybe discuss in the following few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Anku, for that. You did mention about the inflection point, and I think it's a great way to sort of start the discussion with Sana now. Sana, what more could be done to boost this commercial relationship between India and Taiwan? Could anything more be done? I mean, a lot has been mentioned about the PLI scheme, the DLI scheme, how the likes of TSMC are coming to India, possibly. Anything more which could be done in your point of view?
Thank you, Huang, and thank you for inviting me to this timely roundtable. And I totally agree with the previous speakers that there is no better moment than today to discuss Taiwan-India commercial ties. There are strengths and there are complementarities between India and Taiwan, and I think both sides really need to think about it and see how the relations could move forward. But there is a lot of potential in this area. But as the previous speakers also said, there's a lot that could be done, specifically at the government level. Several agreements have been signed specifically targeting the investment commercial areas. It has been in place for a very long time, specifically since the early 2010s. And the most significant is the updated bilateral investment treaty that was signed in 2018. And in fact, that was the last agreement that was signed between India and Taiwan. But despite these initiatives, there's a lot of underutilized potential that exists between India and Taiwan. And even if you look at the investment figures, these are abysmally low. And just to give you a few facts, Taiwan's cumulative investment to India was approximately $2 billion from 2000 to June 2021. And out of this figure, only about 800 million is direct investment. But the positive development is that at least half of this direct investment was received in the last 3 years since 2018, since the signing of the bilateral investment treaty. So it's gradually increasing, and Taiwan is currently India's 32nd largest source of investment. And if you look at the NSP, Mr. Naidu also talked about the NSP, New Southbound Policy. So one of the areas of this flagship foreign policy of Taiwan is strengthening commercial ties. But there's so much disparity among NSP countries in terms of investment from Taiwan. If you look at Taiwan's investment to Vietnam, it's 30 billion, and to Indonesia, it's 17 billion. There's no comparison and India is a huge country. There's no comparison between the size of India and Southeast Asian countries. And while there are just about 100 Taiwanese companies that are operational in India, more than 11,000 companies are there, Taiwanese companies are there in Southeast Asia. So I think, of course, there are a lot of factors that are at play here. But if we look from the perspective of the New Southbound Policy, this disparity is glaring. And so even before I go and answer your question about what could be done to improve the prospects for investment, I believe it's very important to identify what are the problems. So, of course, there are oversimplified reasons such as the lack of framework, then there is bureaucracy, the red tapeism. These are major problems. But in my opinion, there are other problems that also need to be looked at. So one problem is that there is a problem of implementation in a timely manner. And so I'll give you an example. Every few years, we hear about Taiwanese companies' plans to invest heavily in India. Mostly we hear about it from media, but then most of the time it doesn't really take off. So there's a gap between intention and actual realization, and I believe it's a major problem. Then there's a problem of lack of familiarity of Taiwanese businesses of India. Taiwanese businessmen are not really comfortable with dealing with India yet. But I believe that commercial relations have to be strengthened if the stakes in the relation are to be increased. But when you look at the priorities of Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Taiwan and Ministry of Economy, the priorities are less aligned between the two ministries. So this is also a major problem I see because I've been living in Taiwan for 2 years and I've been talking to a lot of officials from both the ministries. So I believe that this is a problem of misaligned priorities. Then both sides are trying to advance commercial relations, but I believe that the focus should be on achievable deliverables. The recommendation should be aligned with the priorities of both Indian and Taiwanese governments and the current economic environment. So Modi government has been working on inviting more foreign direct investment, and India's ease of doing business ranking has also been significantly improved. Then states are given more autonomy to attract investments, and overall there is a positive shift for India-Taiwan relation as well. Then if you look at the trade, it has also increased after getting stagnant for several years. There's more than 60% increase in the in the latest trade volume. Then for a developed country like India, Make in India opens a lot of opportunities for investment and joint production opportunities, specifically when we talk about Taiwan. And as part of Make in India, India is trying to build a self-sufficient manufacturing sector that was also brought out by Mr. Naidu. And then Indian economy is consumption-driven. Taiwan is a major global supplier of ICT and semiconductors, and also one of the major manufacturing hubs of goods such as optical panels, metal fasteners, etc. So if both sides they work in these areas, I think that will open up new possibilities. So India could definitely be an alternative to China in manufacturing because of low-cost labor. This has been talked about several times. We have been talking about this for a very, very long time now. But as regards China, there have been substantive changes that have been taking place. One, at the regional level, I would say that countries that have invested in China, they are now moving to Southeast Asia. Then India is a possibility. This is also being discussed several times. Then Japan and Taiwanese government, they are incentivizing their businesses to pull out of China. Then I believe there's opportunity to invest in India more now. And this is one of the major topics of discussion in the past several years, but no action has really been taken with respect to this area. Then supply chain resilient initiative that was initiated by Japan, Australia, and India. I think this could also be broadened to include Taiwan. And I don't think there should be any official pronouncement about it, or not everything should be made public. But I believe that Taiwan should really be a part of it to develop critical sectors. I think this could really benefit Taiwan, India, and other like-minded countries as well. And in areas which could get maximum returns, I would say are higher education, agriculture, MSME, and but in fact, MOUs have also been signed in these areas between India and Taiwan. So together, these areas touch more than 75% of the Indian population. So I think this actually serves dual purpose of strengthening commercial ties and also Taiwan reaching out to the masses of India through economic initiatives. Then emerging critical sectors such as semiconductor, artificial intelligence, I think Taiwan and India could really work together in these areas. Then Japan and US could also be roped in. And then India understands the importance of engaging partners like Taiwan, especially in the emerging critical sectors. And to work towards this goal, Ministry of External Affairs has also set up a division called NEST. So India is serious about engaging like-minded countries and areas such as technology, such as strengthening commercial ties. So I think Taiwan should also take up this opportunity to engage India more. Then Taiwan can also invest in India's pharma sector. Traditionally, India is known as the pharmacy of the world. And if Taiwan could really partner with India in the pharma sector, then I believe that both countries could really contribute heavily and could benefit from this mutual cooperation. To conclude my initial remarks, I believe that there needs to be more communication between the major stakeholders in India and Taiwan, while TCC and specifically through TETRA and IT officials, they really try hard and they keep interacting with major stakeholders in India and Taiwan. What I believe is that Indian state governments, officials and stakeholders should also be allowed to visit Taiwan without much hassle. And there needs to be clear segregation between non-controversial areas that are mutually beneficial and the political issues. Not everything should come under the banner of the One China policy. And for Taiwan, I would say that now the new Southbound Policy is entering the next phase of its existence and it's adopting a new avatar. So I think there needs to be a country-specific commercial policies, and India is already a priority country within the new Southbound Policy. So I believe that this should be backed by more actions and more coordination. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana, for those extensive initial remarks. I think they'll probably guide the discussion as we go along. Mr. Huang, thank you for joining us today. My question to you for the opening remarks is, you're a part of the Taiwan-India Industrial Collaboration Working Group as well. My question to you is, what has been your biggest takeaway or biggest lesson from that working group? When you look at companies which want to explore India, what has been the biggest takeaway?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to start with some points. I want to put things in perspective so people can from India can understand how things works here in the industry in Taiwan. See, if we are focusing now on the electronic related sectors, Taiwanese business moving from the old days OEM to ODM to EMS. Most of this work and business are coming from our global customers. And then when we talk about how big the market is, actually the market is controlled by the product companies. So it's not controlled by the supplier or the manufacturer of the component or even the end products. For example, if we take a mobile phone, for example, in India, India has a big number of mobile phone sales every year, but close to 90% of those mobile phones are the foreign brands. So who get to decide which mobile phone will use MediaTek's chips? Those are the Chinese brand company, those are the Apple, and also other Korean companies. They decide which chips will go into their products. It's not decided by the Indian consumers. So I think we have to try to put things in perspective, and then it's easier. And also why traditionally there are not so many Taiwanese business coming to invest in India. You have to understand that for Taiwanese business, there are so many choices they can go to. In the early days, without the tight conflict or tension between across the trade now, if you look back 20 years before, there is the people, they speak the same languages. They are lower cost and so many things. It's very convenient. It's right 1 hour, 2 hours fly away from Taiwan. And then if you look at Taiwan now, at any given time, there are more than 400,000 people from Southeast Asia are living in Taiwan. And so many Taiwanese business people are doing business for over 20, 30 years in Southeast Asia countries. So we have to put things in perspective. If I'm a Taiwanese businessman, where do I go? Unless we go back to our customer. If Apple tell me to go to India, then I probably have no choice but going to India and set up. But if Apple give me the choice, then I will start to look for places that I am familiar with. I have relationship, I have network, I have friends. So we have to put things in perspective. It's not like Taiwanese people don't like India. It's a matter of familiarities. So traditionally, we are not geographically so far apart, but the cultural difference and many years of not really engaging, so lead to the result now. But if you look at the past 5 years, there's a huge difference over the last 5 years. The global supply chain has totally made over since the US-China trade conflicts. Then we have the COVID. So since start to get a little bit different. So now with the single long supply chain has been breaking down to a short trend, the short link. So now the Taiwanese company, if we want to do business, then we have to try to follow the new trend to set it up in different places. We have to build up the redundant capacities, mostly for the manufacturer base. So India is definitely under this new trend. Is definitely the one of the top destination for Taiwanese company. And actually, following those few big companies like Winstrong and Pekatron, those big guys go in there. Actually, a lot of small and medium-sized Taiwanese company were intended to move along with them, but then COVID hits, then everybody kind of stop and see what's going on. And you have to understand, Taiwanese government has put a very tight quarantine policies in Taiwan. Up till today, if people travel, Taiwanese people travel outside of Taiwan, you have to be quarantined 10 days when you return to Taiwan. And for any business people, this is a very tough decision to make till today. And of course, over the last few weeks, this is gradually loosening up. So we are hopeful that after a few more months, we will be able to move. And then as far as I know, there are quite a few companies actually are planning or exploring opportunities to invest in India. But there is another factor coming in since the conflict between Russia and Ukraine took place a couple of weeks back, and plus the inflation is going very sharply higher. That bring another layers of uncertainty to the table. So what decision Indian government made for the following months will have an impact on many other investment decisions to follow. So that's what I try to say for now, and then we can talk a little bit more on some other issues later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huang, for these remarks. I just want to pick up on something you shared your views on. You spoke about how a lot of decisions in the supply chain are essentially made by product companies. You know, a lot of companies, like mobile phone companies, they essentially make the decisions which decides who will supply the microchips, or as the case might be, some other components. I guess the question here is, we have seen success by Japanese companies in the automotive sector in India. We've seen South Korean companies do well in the consumer electronics segment in India. Is there a possibility to possibly explore a trilateral dialogue between companies in these countries of Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, so they can sort of share their best practices, although they happen to be different sectors, but perhaps they can share with Taiwanese companies as to what worked for them in India, and they can share these best practices with Taiwanese companies. At a different level, we can perhaps even have a direct India-Taiwan CEO forum where they can be a direct connection. Would that be a feasible option?
Yes, of course. Actually, in fact, we have worked quite closely with Japanese companies throughout different industry sectors, auto, IT, many different sectors. Taiwan has traditionally very close to Japanese industries. So, and we have cooperated with them in many different countries. So in India, I think that's definitely one way that we can further explore. But there's another point I want to make. I really like the ideas of putting the DOI in place, the design link incentives. I think they would help. The reason I think that's the good way to go is because India needs to have your own product companies. I think this is very important. And India has the talent, you have the scale of the market, and Taiwan has the technology and all the design know-hows. So if we can work together and to come up with some good product design for Indian markets, and then if this market are successful in India, then you get to decide what components, what products you want to put in your end products. So I think that's very important. And your people will be working for your own products. So and also the technology will be bring to India and then further develop into next generation technology. So you got to start from somewhere. This is some of the idea that I have been talking to friends from India, that to define and design and manufacture the product for Indian market by the Indian and jointly by the Taiwanese industry.
Thank you, Mr. Huang. I think this is an interesting example which you brought out, because the case study of Taiwan also shows that the ITRI and the ERSO, they played a very critical role in sort of connecting with foreign firms and then initiating technology transfer to spin off commercial ventures in Taiwan. And perhaps something similar can be tried in India. So as mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, I'll just go to Mr. Naidu now. There was this discussion about the TSMC possibly exploring, talks with the Indian government to set up a fabrication facility over here. What do you think could be, what do you think could be an incentive for TSMC to come to India as opposed to other locations, say for example, Arizona in the US or other locations all across the world? What is it that India could offer to, for them to initiate technology transfer to Indian partners?
Yeah, just before that, Bandari, I wanted to just respond to Mr. Wang's, it's a great idea that what he mentioned about the DLI can drive the companies to create, the India products for India markets, and with the support of the Taiwanese companies, those products can go global. That's a great idea, and it started happening. So there are a lot of I know a few of the companies who are working, and for example, edge AI chip, completely. And I also know another company which is doing autonomous vehicle chip. They're all and design companies. They are doing that, and perhaps with the support of the Taiwanese together, they can work together in creating a product that is quite useful to the India product and India markets, and then go global. The second thing, which is also all of us know that, Wistron and Pegatron and Rising Star, these are all the EMS companies that come in. The third thing that has also happened is these Taiwanese clusters, right? The Taiwanese companies generally come as a clusters. There is a cluster in Karnataka and Naidu, and there is a third one. I think it's AP, Andhra Pradesh. There are 3 Taiwanese clusters are coming. So the policy is very good. Clusters are there, and then EMS companies are there. India has the design skills. This is the time why only 30 billion, 70 billion dollars. The investment should go to Southeast Asia, and why not? Why India is only $800 million? So we need to look back. Now coming to the Mr. Bandari's point of TSMC, what incentive? Government of India, the first time they took a strategic decision that, India needs a fab no matter what, right? And also it took the decision on the display fab, etc., because of the kind of consumption what we have. Now, TSMC kind of companies, what they could, probably the government is coming and creating a 50% capital subsidy for setting up of these fabs. Added to that, the states like Karnataka are adding up additional incentive in terms of another 10% coming from the state government, and not just that 10%, they also are giving the other infrastructure at a concessional rate, like the land and other water and the power. Together, it's a huge commercial incentive for a fab company like the TSMC or USMC to look at India. And now the question is why they should come. One is, of course, the government incentive. The local markets are growing, the design companies are growing, and this is a natural progression that we need to have the fab right now. And I think apart from the TSMC, there are many other companies, as you all know, that they are looking at India. And I think this time you saw in the media yesterday that they set up an advisory committee, pretty high level advisory committee. I think this time the fab story is going to be real in India, and everybody geared up for that. Government of India and the state governments are geared up for that. We only wanted the companies like the TSMC and all to come take advantage of the current situation.
Thank you, Mr. Naidu. So now I want to move on to you from this particular point about having India-centric companies in the supply chain. There has been news about the Tatas acquiring this domestic design firm called Sankhya Labs. There has been news about interest from Tower Semiconductors from Israel, which was recently acquired by Intel. So when you have news about the likes of Intel, possibly TSMC, and now Tata's getting involved, it seems to be a promising story. Do you think this will sort of spur up investment when you see so many investors coming to India or possibly investing in fabs? Is this a sort of a positive, feedback effect for Taiwanese firms to possibly look at India again?
It's a very good question. But before I answer that, I think I totally agree with Mr. Wang's point. And sitting from Taiwan and negotiating from Taiwan's perspective, I think you really brought out some points that are actually very critical to India-Taiwan commercial cooperation. And when we talk about new Southbound policy, and even when we talk about Taiwan's engagement with Southeast Asia, we have to see that Taiwan has been engaging Southeast Asia since the 1990s. When India started engaging Southeast Asia as well. So we have to also look at the duration. And also there is language familiarity. A lot of Taiwanese businessmen, they don't want to come to, because of course there are a lot of stereotypes present, existing. But apart from that, language is one factor that has been a dissuading factor for Taiwanese businessmen. There are a lot of initiatives that have been taken from both sides, but this is a problem that has been there. And I think even though initiatives have been taken, is still not progressing well. And Taiwanese businessmen also are in their comfort zone. They are familiar with Southeast Asia, they're familiar with the East Asian region, but with India, there's hardly any rule book, there's hardly any literature that tells, not in Mandarin, not in English, not even in English. So there's a dearth of literature when we talk about how to attract Taiwanese businesses to India. So forget about economic relations. Even when we talk about relationship in general, there's hardly any literature that is present. So I believe that there are a lot of things that the government and even think tanks and industry people could do. But even if the government is really trying and encouraging Taiwanese businesses to come to India, we have to realize that governments are different from industry people. So this is one factor that we have to keep in mind. We keep criticizing that this is not happening. And Indian government is actually inviting Taiwanese side, but they're not coming. But I think there are structural factors that we really have to keep in mind. And when we talk about dialogue, you were so right about it, Kunak, that there have been dialogues. There is dialogue at the joint secretary level in different sectors of economy, but there is in fact an MOU between PhD chambers and FICCI. But agreements have been there. But despite that, so FICCI has this quota of organizing 2 conferences a year. But now with this awareness, high-level awareness about Taiwan, and now everyone is talking about Taiwan. So Taiwan has become a hot topic. So now FICCI and CII, they're also trying to have more and more events and trying to understand Taiwan and trying to encourage Taiwanese businesses to understand Indian market. But now this is a very recent feature that's happening. But there were several initiatives that have been taken by, so there are several Indian companies that are in Taiwan, such as Mahindra, Tata. They're not a lot of companies, but they have substantial presence in Taiwan. So there are Indians who have been working. So they actually, Indian plus Taiwanese, they started something, an organization called Taiwan-India Council, Business Council or something. And now there is TIBA. But all these organizations are led by industry. They have government support, but not overt government support. So your idea that there should be something like CEO forum or something with active government participation should definitely be there, because this actually comes under the mandate of TECC and ITA, the representative offices. It is very much there in the name. So when we talk about China, I don't think we really have to give undue attention when we talk about commercial ties, and we really have to openly and actively pursue the government and the leaders to talk to each other. So communication is there. So I feel that ITA has been doing a lot of work. Even TECC has been doing Tetra. There are 4 offices of Tetra in Delhi, and I feel the number is quite significant. So the intention is right, but I feel there needs to be, both sides really need to talk to each other. That is there, but I feel that more needs to be done. And with your question with semiconductor, I feel that this topic has been so saturated, and we try to portray a rosy picture that, there are talks in media that I saw some article that 7 billion investment is going to be, is going to take place from Taiwan side. But this is all media. When you talk to the government officials, this is not really happening. And I think it's too good to be true at the moment. So I think semiconductor industry in Taiwan, they're already saturated and they're going to the US and other places. But with India, I don't think we really have to pay too much attention to that. But apart from that, I think there are other sectors such as, and I think previous speakers also talked about it, like electronic vehicles and electronics. So I believe that these are the areas where we should focus on more rather than giving too much attention to semiconductor at this moment. And so is the case with the FTA as well. So when you look at social media, everyone is like, there's so much warmth between India and India and Taiwan are going to sign an FTA soon, and there's going to be a lot of investment in the field of semiconductor. So I feel when we keep talking about it, we are actually driving the narrative in the wrong direction.
Sure, Sana, I get your point about that. I just want to pick up and now go to Mr. Anku Jain. Anku, Mr. B.V. Naidu and Sana both spoke about how there have been a range of initiatives, unveiled by the Indian government recently to attract Taiwanese firms to India. But just to look back at MediaTek's history, you guys have been invested in this space for quite some time now. You mentioned there's a wide talent pool and there's an Indian market as well. But did you see any change in policy after Atmanirbhar Bharat was announced, or after the National Electronic Policy of 2019 was announced? Was there any noticeable change in the investment scenario in India?
I think overall, if you see the various PLI schemes which have happened over the last 3-4 years, and of course this semicon fab policy just came in, but even before that, we had the electronic manufacturing PLI scheme, which has helped in the manufacturing for mobile phones and other electronic products. I think those things have actually helped in bringing up investment from different countries. And Taiwan also has done that, and we have seen Wistron and Pegatron, etc., come into the country. I think so. Those are good things which have happened, and this is something which will take time. Several different aspects have to be taken care of. So the entire electronic ecosystem partners need to come in to create a perfect storm for more companies to come in. But I would like to also again talk about the DLI scheme. That is something I would say it's kind of a low-hanging fruit, where the DLI scheme currently is only for the local companies, Indian companies, and for startups in India and MSMEs. But it's not really meant for foreign MNCs who can take advantage of this scheme. So that is maybe a step which government can think of, that can such incentives be also given to the foreign companies. And why I say that is, I agree with Sana that the fab is kind of the last frontier, which will happen hopefully later. But there are several other things which can happen before that. And for that, I think even for the designing in India, I think if the foreign companies can grow further and create a further talent pool, if they invest here, it also helps in creating a more diverse talent pool in India, which is skilled. I think if this kind of DLI scheme is also opened up for foreign companies, I think we will see more research-based investments in India. And manufacturing is a parallel topic, which of course PLI can take care of. But even for the design and research, I think we can try to increase the investments. And I think that's a component. If eventually if the fab happens and more manufacturing happens, and then we also need the design skills. I think so. That is something which we have to work in parallel. And so, and I feel company like MediaTek, we already have about 1,000 engineers here, but we could have had more. If you see countries like Singapore, they give much more incentives even for the research based incentives. If companies set up a center there. So there are certain aspects I feel that more can be done. But definitely, I still think that I look over the overall scenario in the last few years. I look at it very positively because as we heard earlier, due to the geopolitical compulsions of different countries and the supply chain disruptions, etc. I think India has kind of a golden opportunity to attract investments from countries, including Taiwan. And I think this is the time to really make it happen. And I think government is honestly trying very hard. The Indian government is really trying very hard. And I think the 10 billion incentives being given recently for the fab shows the kind of intent they have. And I would agree with Mr. Naidu, that this is the time. If it doesn't happen now, then I don't know when. So this is really, we are looking forward to that.
Thank you, Anku. I think we're nearing the end of our discussion. So I'll just have a few questions for each of the panelists. I guess I'll end on this note. I'll go to each of the panelists and I'll ask one thing if you could change about the current Indian ecosystem to attract more investment from Taiwanese companies, a sort of a wish list, if you will. If there's one thing you could change about the current ecosystem, or if there's one thing which is encouraging and you want it to continue, what would it be? So Sana, I'll go to you first for your quick remarks.
I think steps have been taken, and specifically the latest steps where Prime Minister Modi announced $10 billion investment. So I believe that, of course, there were a lot of problems before, and this was also a dissuading factor for Taiwanese businesses to come to India. But I think more investment that has been, and more infrastructure. So I think this is what is happening. I think Indian government is, there's more coordination among different departments and ministries. So I think this is what the Indian government should continue doing.
Mr. Naidu, do you have anything which you wish to add in terms of a wish list? What more could be done, or anything good which you want to see continue?
Lot should be done. One, of course, when the government has responded favorably, in announcing such policies, I do agree with Sana that it needs to be communicated well to the industry in Taiwan. I just want to, I don't know, I've never gone in depth into the Southbound Policy. Is there something the government from Taiwan could, probably motivate the Taiwanese companies to look at India through Southbound Policy? If so, that becomes the next level of priority, because any government-to-government relationship could, motivate this industry to move faster. Otherwise, as I told you previously, the few EMS companies have come. There are 116 design companies, and there are Taiwanese clusters and industry associations like I remember TCA, these guys, Dennis, who came here 20 years back and set up their office here, and Tetra in Delhi. All the things have been done. Periphery, all the things that are happening. Now, if there is some significant push can come from the government of Taiwan, probably things could, move much faster.
Mr. Huang, anything which you wish to add to that? Anything which you believe the Taiwanese government could do to sort of spike investment levels from Taiwan, or is there anything else which the Indian government could do on its side?
I think both governments are working quite hard. Something we know, something we may not know, or I cannot say. I think they're working quite hard. But I think the problem is the industry, especially the Taiwanese company, like to see some good result in a short-term basis. So instead of try to give incentive to company come all the way to invest in India, I think maybe it would be a good idea to identify some joint projects that can finance by both sides, joined by government and industry together, and we can see short-term results rather than try to bring someone. It's a long decision for any company to invest in the foreign locations, that we all know. But it is a quick decision to make to cooperate on some projects that can bring fruitful result for both sides. And those there are many things like that can be identified by both sides jointly together.
Thank you, Mr. Huang. Anku, do you have anything else to add besides the DLI scheme being possibly expanded to include foreign firms or Taiwanese firms as well? Or is there, anything else you wish to add to the discussion?
Maybe just a minute on that. So as we heard earlier, honestly, Taiwan is, when Taiwan wants to invest in India, India is really competing with geographies like China and Vietnam, right? So we are competing with them for electronic manufacturing. So, India still has kind of high tariffs on import of components for electronic products. So that is something which can be looked into so that, investments more can come into India when competing with other geographies. So that is one point, that still we have the punitive duty and tax structures here. So that could change or can be looked into. Secondly, I think still the regulatory uncertainty is there. Indian government needs to provide a long-term, maybe a few decades of regulatory certainty for the investments to come in, so that if a company comes in and something changes after they plan the investments, then that's really a big cost. So I think that kind of assurance, if it's given to the foreign companies, including from Taiwan, I think that will really go a long way in setting up more investments here.
Thank you, Anku. We have one question in the Q&A box, and it's addressed to Mr. Huang. Mr. Huang, the question, I believe I raised this in the course of the discussions, but I'll just address it again. It says to successfully establish cross-border manufacturing supply chain, technology transfer is very evident. Is there any plan chalked out for technology or design transfer? If so, then what is it? I'm not sure if this is regarding policies in Taiwan or India, but do you want to take a stab at answering this question?
This is a very difficult one. Even for a single product, there are so many things go into it, and different companies from different countries are supplying different products and technologies. So it's very difficult to say that. For example, if we look back to the plan of putting up the display fab, then you have to understand the market dynamic, who control the global market nowadays. The Chinese vendors have over 50% of the market shares. And Japan is moving out. Taiwan has only 3 companies left. We have lost the opportunity for the previous one. When they went under, we have the opportunity to pick up everything, including all the equipment and talents, but we missed that opportunity a couple of years back. Now we have only 3 labs, and there's limited new investment going into this industry now. And you have to understand all the technology, IPs are controlled by those guys. So unless you are able to get it from existing players and then try to work the way for the next 10 years and develop the new generation technologies, then you have something, a foothold in this industry sector. So this kind of thing are very complicated and very difficult. And I would hope our friends from India has to understand the real dynamic of putting things this up. We cannot oversimplify the difficulty and challenges we will probably need to face when we try to set this up. Taiwan had gone through over 30 years of doing this display industry and see where we at now. Even we have those such strong chip manufacturing. All the LED are coming from the chip manufacturing. It's a branch from there. And we have tried, we technology transfer from Japan, and we do many things. And this is a very up and down industry for Taiwan. So now we have come to this point, they are just trying to make it through these difficulties. So there are many things into this, not just technology, but of course, technology is one key aspect of guarantee the success in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Huang. I wish there was more time to ask more questions from all the panelists, because this is a very interesting topic. But I think we've almost reached the end of our scheduled time today for the discussion. So I want to once again thank all the panelists, Dr. Hashmi, Mr. Naidu, Mr. Jain, and Mr. Huang for joining us today. It's been a great discussion, and we hope to carry on discussions of a similar nature in future as well. And hopefully you'll be a part of it as well. So thank you once again very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.